Time for another tier list, and today I've decided to do the Before the Shadow class essences. Now you might see that at the bottom that they look kind of, it was kind of hard to get the screenshots and look nice, but I have the thing here on the right so you can see which essence I'm talking about. So I'm gonna try to give my honest opinion of all the essences, ranking from S, which is the best tier, and then A, B, C, and then F for the terrible tiers. I do have experience with all the classes, but not every line, so I'm gonna try to do my best from my knowledge. Some people might disagree, and in my considerations I take into account what I think the strength of the effect is, but I also have to think about what type it is, because for the necklace essence it doesn't really matter, but for the cloak essences it kind of matters because you're breaking up set bonuses if you're getting the cloak essence. Starting off with the first Beorning necklace essence. Upon getting hit, gain 5 wrath. This effect has a 5-second cooldown. I would say this is pretty useful currently because in like a raid like Hidden Horde where there are whelplings, a lot of puddles, you're getting hit a lot, and this just helps you top up that wrath. It's not like an S tier for sure, but I would say it's pretty useful. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a middle of the ground B tier for the wrath upon getting hit. If it had like a 1-second cooldown, I would put it A tier. The 5-second cooldown puts it on B tier for me. Next up, we have a DPS necklace. When you critically hit, gain 10% thrash damage for 10 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. Now, I'm not a huge Red Bear player, but to me this seems decent, not a huge boost, but it'll still be a DPS boost. So I think this will be another B tier essence that I put in the middle. Next up, we have the first cloak essence, and this is one that I personally use. Most yellow Beornings will have the 4 set for healing, and then probably the 3 set for blue with the mitigations. And getting this means you have to lose the mitigation bonus. And the minus 5% sacrifice mitigation it's not a massive upgrade, but it's still pretty decent. So I would say this another B tier as well. It's one of those where you can, if you use it, it's fine. If you don't, it's also fine. It's like personal preference. And the last Beorning essence is the one that gives you perma 5 wrath, which would put your wrath max at 105. And I like the idea behind this, but I don't ever see that you need this, because most of the times you're going to be spending your wrath. You're never going to need to get to 105. So I actually think this one is actually an F tier. It's kind of like a trap essence. Like they're saying, oh, you're getting more wrath. Here, take this. But I actually think it's like a trap essence, so I think it's definitely an F tier. It's not worth at all. Next up, we have the first cloak essence for the Brawler class. Efficient Strike causes Metal Shield to consume 1 metal per hit. Now, Brawler already has the 4 set bonus in blue line for the Hidden Horde raid that does exactly this, like forever. So currently, Efficient Strikes is on a 3-minute cooldown, and for 20 seconds it reduces your metal shield consumment, but I think this is another trap essence. Even without the set bonus from Hidden Horde, I still don't think this is worth for the 20 seconds. So I'm actually gonna put this, I mean, it's not a terrible essence, but I'm gonna put it in C tier. I don't like this at all. Next up, we have the second cloak essence. Minus 45-second plant feed cooldown, and the effect from plant feed lasts 10 seconds but tears up every second. Now I actually like this essence. Plant feed currently puts a hotspot when you pop the cooldown, and every 4 seconds it tears up your mitigations. It takes like 30 seconds or something to get to max mitigations, which is like 6 or 7% mits. But with this essence you get a reduced cooldown, and the effect lasts for 10 seconds but tears up a lot faster, giving you high mitigations faster. I think this is actually one of the better ones, so I'm going to put it on A tier. Necklace essence for Brawler. When you hit an enemy, there's a 10% chance your setup skills will give you 1 extra medal for 10 seconds. And this effect has a 30-second cooldown. So as a Brawler, you're going to hit the enemy quite a lot, and then you get the 10% proc chance to produce some extra medal. And I think this is actually pretty good if it hadn't been for the 30-second cooldown on the proc. If the cooldown on this proc was shorter, I would give it a better rating, but I actually think this is a C tier essence. The other necklace essence for Brawler, when you critically hit, there's a 25% chance your bonus damage from metal will be doubled for 10 seconds. This effect has a 30-second cooldown. Now this is actually a good essence in my opinion, because doubling your damage for 10 seconds on the metal bonus damage is good. It does have a bit of a long cooldown, but it's still a DPS buff, making it a must pick for a red Brawler in my opinion. So this one gets a A tier for me. Next up we have the Cloak Essence for the Burglar class. -2 seconds on provoke cooldown. Now this I think is one of those where it doesn't matter if you have it. If you have it, it's fine. If you don't, it's also fine. I just think this is a B tier. Getting provoke more often is nice and all, but it's not super great. It's no S tier. Next up we have a Burglar necklace essence. When you critically hit, there's a 25% chance you will reduce your target's critical defense by 10% for 15 seconds. This effect has a 30-second cooldown. Now this essence I actually think is pretty good for Burglar, considering I believe it can stack with the original effect that you have in Redline with the crit defense debuff. The 30-second cooldown is a bit long for this proc. 10% crit defense debuff for 15 seconds is pretty nice. I would say mainly for Yellowberg, I would put this actually in A tier. It's a pretty solid essence to have. The other essence for the necklace for Burglar, from stealth skills apply a 5% incoming damage debuff for 8 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. This of course looks really nice. For Yellowberg it's kinda tricky to apply, but for Redberg this is pretty good. And in my opinion this essence deserves A tier. Good damage increase for everyone and for your Redberg. The other Cloak essence for Burglar, tricks will restore 5% of your max morale when used. Now this can be nice in a lot of situations, getting that extra healing every time you use a trick. It does have a 15-second cooldown though, but I still think it's a nice quality of life. It's a pretty good essence, but I think the other Cloak essence kind of outshines it. It would be pretty nice to heal for 5% every time you use a trick, but a 15-second cooldown. But overall, I think it's not as good as it might seem. So to me, this is a C tier essence. Moving on to the Captain, plus 5% damage reduced by Shield of the Dunedain. Now this one is one of those that I would call a trap essence. Shield of the Dunedain is already really strong, and you don't really need this extra 5%. So I'm actually going to go ahead and put this in C tier. I don't think this is great at all. Next up we have the first Cloak essence, which does mean breaking up your set bonuses, but it should not be a huge loss for Cappy. Gallant Display, which is a healing skill on a really short cooldown. Increased damage, increased healing, but also increased power cost. Now this skill will kind of change with the upcoming update 35, being more of a damaging skill in Redline, being like a mix of damage and healing in yellow, and being a healing skill in blue line. I do think for Red Cappy this is going to be pretty good. For Blue Cappy it's going to be a solid choice. I'm actually going to give this a B tier, assuming the power cost is not too much with the power rework. I think this is a pretty good essence. The other necklace essence is more of a, I would say, a Red Cappy essence. When you hit an enemy, there's a 10% chance you will gain a defeat response. This also has a 30-second cooldown, and the long cooldown on this makes me think it's not really that great. It makes me want to put it on C tier. I don't think this is that good. Necklace essence for Captain. When you critically hit, there's a 25% chance the cooldown of Battle Shout will reset. This effect has a 20-second cooldown. Now the question is, do you really need Battle Shout to reset? With the upcoming Cappy rework, I feel like this is more aimed at Yellow Line, which currently only has one way to get into Battle Readied. I still think this is not that great. For me, it goes into C tier as well. Moving on to Champion, the first Cloak Essence, plus 15% Masochism damage buff, and also plus 7.5 Masochism mitigation buff. Now, while it's true that Blue Champ is not played a lot, this is still a really good essence for Blue Champ. This mitigation buff is really strong. I'm actually going to put this up into A tier. The other Cloak Essence reduces your bracing attack heal by 15%, but bracing attack gives fervor instead of consuming this. Now, I don't even have to talk about this. Reducing the heal and just gaining some fervor, to me, it's really easy. F tier, terrible essence. Necklace essence for champion. When you critically hit, there's a 25% chance your fervor bonus damage will be doubled for 10 seconds. So when this procs, your damage from the fervor bonus will increase. It's not great, but it is a damage increase, and damage increase on a DPS class makes me put it in A tier. DPS increase and a must pick for champion. The other necklace essence for champ. When you hit an enemy with a strike skill, there's a 10% chance you will gain an extra fervor every second for 5 seconds. And this has a 20-second cooldown on the proc. Now it might seem nice to get some extra fervor generation, but I still think this is not really needed. I think this one is pretty bad as well. I think this belongs in C tier. The first Guardian Cloak Essence. Retaliation briefly lowers your target's mitigations at the cost of your own. Your target loses 3% Physmit, but you lose 3% Physmit, but you gain 10% melee damage. Obviously, this is aimed at DPS Guardian. So this is actually, in my opinion, a pretty good essence for a DPS guard. I think it belongs up in A tier. The other cloak essence for Guardian is plus 5% max morale from Warrior's Heart. This is kind of like the Field of the Dunedain, which you don't really need the extra 5% morale, but I do think it's an okay essence. It's not great, it's not bad. I think it belongs in B tier. If you have it, it's fine. If you don't, it doesn't matter. Necklace essence for Guardian. When you hit an enemy, there's a 10% chance the cooldown of force opening will reset. This effect has a 15-second cooldown. Now, I'm not that experienced with the Red Guard rotation, but to me, I think this is pretty good, but it's not like a must-have. I do believe this belongs in B tier, but I'm not 100% sure about this one. The other one is critical hits with Sting will give you a parry response, and I actually think this is a pretty good essence. I use this on my Guardian, and I think it can be useful in a lot of, like even for red and for blue. Can be pretty useful. I think this one belongs in A tier. The first Hunter Cloak Essence. Now for Hunter, to get a Cloak Essence, you will have to break up really important set bonuses, so they're probably not going to be worth, and especially when the blood arrow damage increase, so you lose the initial heal 15%. This in my opinion is clearly a F tier essence, not worth at all. And the other Cloak Essence is 50-second low cut cooldown. Shorter cooldown, but it now gives mitigation 10% on both for 10 seconds. Now, while this seems alright, I still think it's bad to break up your cloak essences. I can see this being decent in the Moors, but I still overall would put this on C tier. And next up, we have the first necklace essence for Hunter. When you hit an enemy, there is a 5% chance the cooldown of Heartseeker will be reset. Now, even though this has a 30-second cooldown, this is such a strong DPS boost that this is going to be my first S tier essence. Must have for every Hunter player. Really, really strong essence. The other necklace essence, when you critically hit, there's a 10% chance you will gain 5% crit chance for 15 seconds. And it has a 45-second cooldown to proc. Now I notice the tooltip says 5%, but I believe it currently is actually 3% range skill crit chance. This one is also not terrible, it's pretty good, but it just gets destroyed by the Heartseeker essence. While getting 15 seconds of range skill crit chance is pretty good, Heartseeker is just better. This one is still really good, leaves me to put it in A tier. Loremaster Necklace Essence. When you critically hit, the active cooldown of Murder of Crows will be reduced by 2 seconds. Now this is a blue Loremaster Essence, and for blue LM I think this is pretty good, reducing the cooldown of Murder of Crows, which in itself is a really good cooldown. I would actually say if you play blue LM, this is an A tier. The other Necklace Essence for Loremaster, when you use a fire skill, there's a 50% chance you will apply an additional damaging burn. This effect has a 25-second cooldown. So this one is pretty good for red Loremaster, and even for yellow Loremaster, it's a nice little extra damage buff to have, but mainly for red, I think this looks pretty nice. So I think mainly if we're thinking red Loremaster, this belongs in A tier as well. The first Cloak Essence for Lore Master, Wizard's Frost Healing now affects Fellows. I don't know, I just think this is bad. Can't really say anything else, I think this is pretty bad. Now this one, the other Cloak Essence, is a must-have for the Yellow Lore Master. Plus 5-second Blinding Flash duration is fine, but the big one here is plus 5-second Enfeeble duration. So your skills that benefit from Enfeeble will last another 5 seconds with the Enfeeble effect. Mainly Ancient Craft, really strong. This 100% S tier must pick for any Lore Master. The Minstrel Cloak Essence, which also means breaking up your set bonuses, which can be a bit tricky as a Minstrel, but critical heals with Triumphant Spirit will give your allies 3% mitigations for 10 seconds. Now this one I think is actually really strong. Triumphant Spirit does have quite a long cooldown, but the 3% mitigations for 10 seconds is really strong. So I think this is great, but not like super great, so this belongs in my opinion in A tier. The other Cloak Essence gives 50% Fellowship's Heart healing, but also increases the cooldown on Fellowship's Heart. And I think Fellowship's Heart already is pretty strong. You don't really need this 50%, and increasing the cooldown just for some extra heals on it, I don't think that's worth at all. I almost want to put this in F, but it's a healing increase. I think it belongs in C tier, so it's not worth getting. The Triumphant Spirit is just much stronger. Minstrel, a Necklace Essence. When you critically hit, there's a 10% chance you will gain 30% Echoes damage and 5% healing over time for 15 seconds. Now the healing over time effect, I don't really think that matters. The big thing here is 30% Echoes damage, which will increase your DPS, and increasing DPS is always good. I think this belongs in A tier, mainly for Red Minstrel. The other Necklace Essence, when you hit an enemy, there is a 5% chance you will gain 20% ballad and coda damage for 10 seconds. Another damage increase essence, the fact that it only increases your ballads and your coda leads me to put it in B tier, but I still think this is pretty useful. Rune-Keeper, first Necklace Essence. When you critically hit, there is a 15% chance to trigger the Harsh Debate effect. This effect has a 20-second cooldown. So this will be a secondary way to trigger the Harsh Debate effect, which I do think is pretty useful in itself, but it's not hugely important. You usually proc this anyways from normal usage. I think this one we can safely put in B tier. It's good to have, but if you don't have it, it doesn't hurt you that much. The other Necklace Essence for Rune-Keeper. When you hit an enemy, there is a 5% chance you will apply a 3% attack mitigation debuff for 20 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. So a tactical mitigation debuff will help you, but also other classes. A bit of a long cooldown, but the duration of the debuff is almost the same as the cooldown. I think this is a really good DPS buff. This belongs in A tier for sure. The first Cloak Essence for Rune-Keeper, plus 15-second epic for the Aegis cooldown, minus 1 second induction, plus 25% heal. Now I don't really play blue Rune-Keeper, but in my opinion, this sounds like a nerf to a skill. I don't like reducing cooldowns of healing skills, especially the big ones. I think probably this belongs in a C tier, maybe even F, but I'm not experienced enough with the arcade to comment on that one. The other Cloak Essence, Steady Hands, gives you 7% damage mitigations for 10 seconds. Now this one can actually be pretty useful, especially in the Ettenmoors. I think in a lot of situations this can be pretty good. I almost want to put it in A tier, but I believe B tier is fine for this one. It's not the greatest, it's not the worst, but it can be nice to have. And finally we come to the Warden class. First Necklace Essence, when you hit an enemy with a Fist Gambit, there is a 50% chance you will apply a 3% light mitigation debuff for 20 seconds. This effect has a 30-second cooldown. Now this essence is good both for yourself, but also for classes like DPS Minstrel, and a 20-second duration with a 30-second cooldown is really strong. It's another one that I almost want to put in S tier, but it's still really good. Belongs in A tier for sure. Must have for a Warden. The other Necklace Essence for Warden is when you critically hit, your mastery cooldowns are reduced by 2 seconds. If this was a constant thing, it would be an A tier for sure, but since the effect has a 5-second cooldown, I will put this one in B tier. Still pretty useful, but not as great as you would think. The first Cloak Essence for Warden, plus 2% physical mitigation from Shield Mastery and tactical mitigation from Shield Tactics. So basically just a free 2% mitigations from using these two gambits. I kind of want to put this in A tier, but I think just getting free mitigations basically is so good for a tank that I do believe this actually belongs in S tier and a must pick for a blue Warden. And the final Cloak Essence for Warden, plus 30% heal bonus for Conviction. This is fine, more healing on Conviction. It's not great, it's not terrible. Easy B tier essence. And that puts the finishing touch on my tier list for the essences. Only 3 of them I deemed worthy of S tier. Let me know in the comments if you disagreed with any of my picks, if you think I put something in S tier that didn't deserve it, if some of the A tier ones didn't deserve it, or if you like some of the F tier ones. Just let me know if you disagree with some of my choices. I think it's pretty accurate, I think it's pretty fair. But of course, other people with more experience with playing with these essences might disagree, but I hope you enjoyed watching me put together my tier list. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing to help out the channel, leave a like, join my Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse is a community Discord server for the game Lord of the Rings Online. In this server, you'll find anything from giveaways. There's also a frequently asked questions channel that I would recommend checking out first. You'll be able to see when I put out new YouTube videos, whenever I stream. You can also ask for the streamer role, and you'll be able to post your own streams in this server for everyone to see. There's currently over 5,000 members in this Discord, and it keeps growing. You will also find discussion channels about the game, LOTRO. You can ask any questions in the help channel. There's discussions for every single class in the game and PvP. But one of the best things about this server is the best in slot items section. In this section, you can find trait lines for every single class. You will find screenshots of the current best gear being displayed. In this channel, you'll find charts showing what stats you need for your characters, mitigations, mastery crit, finesse, but you'll also find useful information about drop rates in different instances. I hope you will consider joining my server, and maybe one day I'll see you in Middle-earth.